Ways to Heal the National Divides. A presentation by Paul Brackey, author, publisher. American Leadership Books. Author of 9 books on social, political, and criminal justice issues. There are several major considerations to take into account to heal the divides. Our continuing need for each other. The effects of a demographic shift in America. The increasing incivility and toxicity of the current system. The psychological factors contributing to the great divisions. Some ways to reform the system in light of the foregoing considerations. To heal the divides, we need to emphasize how much those on each side of the divides need each other, though the need is not always mutual. The older generation needs and should get help from the younger generations. Though the younger generations often manage on their own better than their parents do, some need an occasional assist from mom and dad. Parents of younger children could benefit from having live-in or nearby grandparents to help raise their children. Here are some key reasons. The South benefits from the greater taxes paid by the North. The North needs the South for some of its agricultural products. The coasts need the Midwest for their farms and livestock. The Midwest needs the coasts in order to ship their products internationally and to import the products it needs. Here's why these regions are so interdependent. Rural America would not survive without hungry urban America there to buy its goods. Urban America could not survive without rural America unless it imported all of its food, which would seriously raise food prices. Yet these two Americas don't appreciate each other, which has led to the disaffection expressed by the two-party political system. Urbanites need to appreciate the hard work and work ethic of rural America. Rural Americans need to acknowledge their dependence on urban America for consuming their products, for commerce in general, and for tax supports. Another source of divisiveness is the declining proportion of white Americans. Though minority concerns about discrimination are highlighted in the media, any protests by white America are met with charges of racism and white nationalism. But white Americans feel a great loss of power because of the influx of immigrants they feel are taking advantage of our system. The higher birth rate among Latin Americans and blacks has decreased the relative percentage of whites in the population. Many white Americans have reacted as a threatened group. They feel mistreated and disrespected. In response, they have embraced tribalism, so they have become more insular, defensive, punitive, and us versus them. Liberals and the media don't recognize this growing fear whites have of being eclipsed. Instead, liberals and the media treat white protests with derision, feeling their claims are unjustified. Liberals sympathize with other group members when they feel they are attacked individually or as a group. There are growing hate crimes and protests against targeted groups. These groups include Jews, Muslims, Latins, gays, transgendered individuals. But whites calling attention to their own grievances are viewed as attackers. They are called fascists, Nazis, nationalists, and white supremacists, terms associated with evil, so their grievances are considered illegitimate or mocked by the media, such as for losing income due to tariff wars, since they voted for Trump. Or their plight is considered well-deserved, such as when they lose money. What's the solution? Here are my suggestions. A good starting point is to recognize and respect the legitimacy of the complaints of white Americans. Their complaints should be seen as equally valid as the claims of other groups. Based on understanding the validity of their complaints, there should be discussions with representatives of different groups and a report issued to the media. If the divisiveness isn't ameliorated, the alternative is worsening relationships. The two-party system has become increasingly uncivil and toxic. This toxicity has led to tribalism, whereby politicians in each party show allegiance to their tribe more than to their constituents or country. Cooperation and collaboration are nearly non-existent. Another reason for this incivility and toxicity is the emphasis on money and greed, creating increasing economic inequality. This growing inequality has led to much suffering and anguish. Compromise could be a solution, but tribalism undermines that. Certain psychological factors contribute to separating us into groups. 1. Being part of a team. 2. Polarization furthered by the news media. 3. More polarization due to the social media. 4. The contribution of identity politics. Here's how they each play a part. The divisions in current U.S. politics are less about the issues than being part of a team, such as Team Red or Team Blue. Individuals take sides by turning the other side into an us versus them conflict. Liberals become libtards while conservatives become fascists, so there is no basis for finding common ground. The media promotes division because it likes controversy, which sells stories. The messages from increasingly divisive political campaigns are emphasized by the media. The media repeats the same message again and again. Increasingly, Republicans and Democrats get their news from different sources. Republicans get much of their news from Fox News. Democrats tune into MSNBC, CNN, and the late-night comics like Stephen Colbert. The social media exacerbates the divisions in America in this way. Individuals seek out sources for information that supports their viewpoint. They pay less attention to or actively screen out information sources that contradict their own biases. This phenomenon is called confirmation bias. This bias helps individuals choose and stay with their chosen side. Identity politics further splits individuals on different sides politically from each other. Liberals and conservatives not only disagree on policy but increasingly don't want to live near each other, be friends, or marry members of the other group. Psychologists call this phenomenon affective polarization, meaning that our feelings or affect are different towards members of our group compared to outsiders. Americans increasingly don't just disagree about issues but are less willing to socialize with others with different views. There are counter-protests to protests by the other side. There is growing physical violence on both sides. These actions and attitudes contribute to building barriers between each side of the divide. A more objective look is needed to examine the issues that divide the two sides to help decide how to break the impasses. Reducing the current need to raise funds for re-election efforts would help, since both sides are spending too much money on these races. They believe the campaign with the most money is more likely to win and campaign debt can be paid off after the election. But a huge spending spree at election time doesn't always work, reflected in the loss of Hillary Clinton and several millionaire business people. Due to financial excesses, campaign finance reform is badly needed to reduce the corroding influence of money from big money donors seeking favorable treatment and the wastefulness of huge sums spent by both parties. Institute campaign finance reforms to reduce expenses so legislators would spend less time at phone banks soliciting contributions. Then they would have more time to attend to the people's business. Change procedural rules to encourage bipartisan action and compromise. Require a supermajority for passing all bills. This would force members of Congress to pass more bipartisan legislation, otherwise they would risk losing re-election because they didn't get anything done. At least 14 state legislatures have such requirements to pass bills to increase taxes. The Electoral College has become a source of much tension and needs to be reformed. The Electoral College was originally designed to balance the power of the more rural states with less population against the more urbanized states with more population. But now this voting system has deprived most Americans of the value of their vote. In the 2016 election, the 10 battleground states, largely in the Midwest, had a combined total of 132 Electoral College votes out of 538 votes. These states received most of the attention. The remaining 75% of the voters were effectively disenfranchised, their issues didn't count as much. The solution: the Electoral College should be reformed to make presidential candidates appeal to voters in all states, not just the battleground or most populous states. Another possibility is modifying the primary system so party leaders select the candidates. This approach harks back to the smoke-filled rooms in which leaders used to choose the party's candidates at conventions. The party leaders used to do this before the 1960s. The advantage of this approach is that it eliminates the corrosive nature of the current very long primary campaigns with dozens of candidates. This selection by party leaders would also get rid of the polarization of extremes. This is an approach suggested by Bradley R. Gitz, a freelance columnist. The news media can play a role in reducing divisiveness too. The media can contribute to bipartisanship by inviting speakers with a more neutral position. The news media might seek out speakers who offer common-sense proposals on an issue promoting compromise or bipartisanship. Talk radio programs should be encouraged to do the same. Both citizens and legislators should be reassured that bipartisanship can and should work in supporting certain legislation. They should be provided with examples of bipartisanship successes. The news media and talk radio should be encouraged to feature these stories. Some examples of this bipartisan success include these. The near-unanimous passage of a criminal sentence reform bill. The unanimous passage of a bill to address the opioid crisis. Such compromise is needed now, since both political parties are in disarray. This disarray is due to public anger, disappointment, the election, and the recent Mueller report. Conservatives face being overwhelmed when whites become a minority in the country in a few decades. The current administration must reach out successfully to blacks, Hispanics, and women, or face a flood of anger at the voting booth. No amount of voter registration requirements or mass deportations will prevent this flood of anger. There are many reasons for Americans of different political stripes to work together. The goal must be to achieve a more united country to contribute to the success of all. The current president may be able to govern despite this divisiveness, but his successors may not. Previous books and chapters on the national divides in the U.S. Fractured America. Chapters in Crime in America. Uncertain Justice. For more information, American Leadership Books. Little Rock, Arkansas. www.americanleadershipbooks.com. Info@americanleadershipbooks.com.